The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the mahogany table as I sat at the head, surrounded by faces I'd known my entire life. My sister Jessica sat to my right, her designer dress probably costing more than most people's monthly rent. My brother Marcus was across from her, checking his phone between bites of the prime rib I'd paid for. My mother sat at the other end, her jewelry glittering under the warm light. This wasn't just any dinner. It was supposed to be a celebration. My company had just closed a deal worth $47 million. I'd spent the last 8 years building TechVision solutions from nothing, working 18-hour days, sleeping in my office, missing holidays and birthdays. Tonight, I thought, would be different. Tonight, I wanted to share this moment with the people who mattered most. So Daniel, my mother began, dabbing her lips with a linen napkin, now that you've finally made some real money, I was thinking you could help Marcus with his restaurant idea. He's been working on the concept for months. I glanced at Marcus, who hadn't looked up from his phone. Working was a generous term. The last 3 business ideas I'd funded for him had failed within 6 months. Each time, he'd blamed the market, the location, the economy, never his own lack of effort. Mom, we can talk about that later, I said, trying to keep the evening positive. Tonight, I just wanted us all to be together. It's been almost a year since we've done this. Jessica finally chimed in, swirling her wine glass. Well, some of us have actual responsibilities, Danny. I can't just drop everything because you finally landed a big client. Some of us have been successful for years. I felt the familiar sting but pushed it down. Jessica worked as a marketing consultant, a job I'd helped her get through my connections. The years of success, she mentioned, had been funded largely by the generous salary I paid her as TechVision's marketing director, a position where she showed up maybe 3 days a week. I understand, Jess. I'm just glad you could make it tonight. My father would have handled this differently. He died when I was 19, just before I started college. He was a self-made man who built a small construction company from the ground up. He taught me about integrity, hard work, and the value of family. Take care of them, Daniel, he'd said in those final days at the hospital. They're all you've got. I'd taken those words to heart. Maybe too much. Daniel, my mother continued, I also wanted to discuss the house situation. You know the mortgage is getting difficult for me to manage. I was thinking, with this new deal of yours, you could just pay it off. It's only $700,000. That's nothing to you now. Mom, I've been paying your mortgage for the last 5 years, I said carefully. Along with the property taxes, the maintenance, the renovations you wanted. Are you seriously going to nickel and dime your own mother? Jessica interrupted, her voice sharp. After everything she's done for you? Something inside me shifted. Everything she's done for me? Don't use that tone with your sister, my mother said. We're family. Family helps each other. I looked around the table, really looked at them. Marcus, still on his phone, hadn't contributed a word to the conversation. Jessica, wearing the Cartier bracelet I'd bought her for her last birthday. My mother, living in a house I'd been paying for while she criticized how I spent my money. You're right, I said slowly. Family does help each other. So let me ask, when was the last time any of you helped me? The table went silent. Marcus finally looked up from his phone. What are you talking about? Jessica said. We're here, aren't we? Supporting you. Supporting me. I set down my fork, my appetite gone. Jessica, you show up to the office 3 times a week, maybe. You miss meetings, you don't return client calls, and I still pay you a 6-figure salary. Marcus, I've funded 3 of your failed businesses. Mom, I've paid every bill you've had for 5 years. That's what family does, my mother said, her voice rising. Your father would be ashamed of you, keeping score like this. The mention of my father ignited something in me. Dad would be ashamed of me? He built everything from nothing. He worked until his hands bled. He taught me that success comes from hard work, not from taking advantage of the people who love you. How dare you? Jessica stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. We've been there for you your whole life. When you were starting your little company, who believed in you? When you were working those ridiculous hours, who told you to keep going? You did, Jess. With words. Just words. You know what you didn't do? You didn't work those hours with me. You didn't risk anything. You didn't sacrifice anything. And the moment I succeeded, you all lined up with your hands out. This is unbelievable, Marcus finally spoke. You're seriously going to act like you're better than us because you got lucky with some tech company? Lucky. I felt my voice rise for the first time. I worked for 8 years. I lived in a studio apartment eating ramen while you were all living comfortably on the money I was sending home. I missed Dad's memorial service because I was in Tokyo closing a deal that kept my company alive and your bills paid. The chandelier above us seemed to flicker, or maybe it was just my vision blurring with rage and hurt. Daniel, calm down, my mother said. You're being dramatic. I'm being dramatic? Mom, last year when I couldn't make it to your birthday because I was dealing with a company crisis, you didn't speak to me for 2 months. But when I told you I couldn't pay for Marcus's 4th business idea, you called me selfish. Jessica crossed her arms. Maybe you are selfish. You have all this money, all this success, and you're acting like it's such a burden to help your family. Let me tell you something, Danny. Without us, you're nothing. We're the ones who made you who you are. We're the foundation you built everything on. Those words hung in the air like smoke. Without us, you're nothing. I stood up slowly, my napkin falling from my lap to the floor. For a moment, nobody spoke. I looked at each of them, really looked at them, and saw my life with sudden, painful clarity. You're right, Jessica, I said quietly. You absolutely right. Finally, some sense, my mother said with a satisfied nod. No, Mom. You don't understand. Jessica's right that I built everything on a foundation. But that foundation wasn't you. It was Dad's lessons. It was his work ethic. It was the example he set, not the example any of you have shown me for the past 8 years. I pulled out my phone and opened my lawyer's contact. I need to make some changes. Effective immediately. What are you doing? Marcus asked, a hint of worry in his voice. What I should have done a long time ago. Setting boundaries. Danny, don't be ridiculous, Jessica said, but I heard the fear creeping into her voice. I held up a hand. You said without you, I'm nothing. Let's test that theory, shall we? Jessica, you're terminated from TechVision. Effective immediately. You'll receive 2-week severance, which is more generous than you deserve given your performance. Marcus, the apartment I've been paying for? I'm ending that lease. Mom, I'll pay your mortgage for 3 more months. That gives you time to either sell the house or find a way to pay for it yourself. You can't do this, my mother shrieked, standing up. I'm your mother. And I'm your son, I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. The son who has given you everything for years while receiving nothing but demands and criticism in return. The son who put your needs above his own happiness, his own relationships, his own life. Well, not anymore. I grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was steel. This is emotional blackmail, Jessica said. You're manipulating us. I actually laughed at that. I'm manipulating you? That's rich, Jess. Really rich. Where are you going? My mother demanded. Away from here. Away from people who only see me as a wallet. You want to know something funny? I was going to tell you tonight that I'd set up trust funds for all of you. 2 million each. I was going to make sure you were all taken care of for life. But then Jessica said those magic words. Without us, you're nothing. I headed toward the door, my family's voices rising behind me in a chaos of protests and accusations. You'll regret this, Jessica shouted. I turned back one last time. No, I don't think I will. You know what I regret? I regret all the times I chose you over myself. I regret every sacrifice I made thinking it would make you proud of me, make you love me more. I regret believing that family meant unconditional support when apparently, for you, it only meant unconditional money. Daniel, please. My mother's voice cracked. Don't do this. We're your family. Then act like it, I said simply. When you're ready to have a relationship with me that isn't based on my bank account, you know where to find me. I walked out into the cool evening air, leaving behind the sound of their protests. My phone was already buzzing with texts and calls, but I silenced it. For the first time in 8 years, I felt like I could breathe. I got into my car, a modest sedan despite my wealth, because I'd never been one for flashy displays, and just sat there for a moment. My hands were still shaking. Had I really just done that? Had I just cut off my entire family? But then I remembered Jessica's sneer, Marcus's indifference, my mother's entitlement, the years of taking and never once giving back. I started the engine and drove away from that house, that dinner, that life. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was driving towards something I chose, not something that was expected of me. The city lights blurred past my windows as I headed back to my penthouse, the one place that was truly mine, that I'd earned, that no one could take from me or make demands about. My phone kept buzzing. I glanced at it at a red light. 17 missed calls. 32 text messages. All from them. Not one saying, I'm sorry. Not one acknowledging that maybe, just maybe, they'd pushed too far. Just more demands, more guilt trips, more manipulation. I blocked all their numbers and drove on into the night, toward an uncertain future that, somehow, felt brighter than the past I was leaving behind. 3 weeks had passed since that dinner, and they had been the strangest weeks of my life. The silence was jarring at first. For 8 years, my phone had been a constant stream of requests, demands, and complaints from my family. Now, nothing. I'd expected to feel guilty. I'd expected the crushing weight of abandoning my family to keep me up at night. Instead, I found myself sleeping better than I had in years. My assistant, Patricia, had noticed the change immediately. She'd been with me since the company's 3rd year, and she'd witnessed the constant interruptions from my family. The urgent calls during important meetings, the last-minute requests that derailed my entire day. You seem different, she said one morning, bringing me my coffee. Patricia was in her 50s, efficient and direct in a way I'd always appreciated. Lighter, somehow. Is it that obvious? I asked, reviewing the quarterly reports on my desk. Daniel, in the 5 years I've worked for you, I've watched you age a decade. In the last 3 weeks, you look like you've gotten 10 years back. She paused at the door. I don't know what happened, and you don't have to tell me. But whatever it was the right call. Her words stayed with me throughout the day. Was it really that noticeable? Had I been carrying that much weight? That afternoon, I had lunch with Robert Chen, my business partner and one of the few people I truly considered a friend. We'd met at a tech conference 7 years ago, and he'd been instrumental in TechVision's growth. Robert was also the only person I'd told about what happened at the dinner. So, Robert said, cutting into his steak. Any word from them? Blocked their numbers, I admitted. Though I'm sure they're still trying. Good. Robert had always been direct. You know, I met your sister once, at that company Christmas party 3 years ago? I remember. She spent 20 minutes telling me about her marketing expertise, and another 40 trying to convince me to invest in some pyramid scheme she'd gotten involved in. I remember thinking, this is Daniel's sister? Really? I laughed despite myself. She's always been good at networking. Less good at actual work. Daniel, can I be brutally honest with you? Isn't that your default setting? Robert smiled. Fair point. Look, I've watched you build this company from nothing. I've seen your vision, your work ethic, your integrity. And I've also watched your family drain you like vampires. Every time you'd get some momentum, There'd be some family crisis that needed money or attention. You know how many times we've had to reschedule crucial meetings because your mother had some emergency. Too many, I admitted. 17, Robert said. I counted. 17 times in 5 years. And you want to know how many of those emergencies were actual emergencies? How many? 0. Not one. They ranged from the landscaper wants too much money, to Marcus needs bail money again. Nothing that actually required your immediate attention, but you always dropped everything. His words hit harder than I expected. I didn't realize. Of course you didn't. That's what they counted on. Robert leaned forward. You're a good man, Daniel. Too good, maybe. Your father would be proud of what you've built, but I don't think he'd be proud of how you've let them take advantage of you. They're family. So, family isn't a free pass to exploit someone. Family should lift you up, not weigh you down. We finished lunch talking about business, but Robert's words echoed in my mind for the rest of the week. Had it really been that bad? Had I been so blind? I decided to do something I'd been avoiding. I went through my financial records from the past 8 years. What I found shocked me. Patricia helped me compile everything into a spreadsheet. The numbers were staggering. In 8 years, I'd given my family just over $4.2 million. Not loaned. Given. That didn't include the salaries I paid Jessica or the apartment I maintained for Marcus. $4 million. Jesus, Patricia whispered, looking over my shoulder at the screen. It's worse than I thought, I said quietly. Daniel, look at this spike here. She pointed to a period about 4 years ago. You gave them $400,000 in 3 months. What happened? I remembered. Marcus got into some trouble. Gambling debts. He said they'd hurt him if he didn't pay. Did they? I don't know. I paid it, so I guess we'll never find out if it was real or not. Patricia was quiet for a moment. You know what I find most interesting about this data? The pattern. Every time your company hits a major milestone, within a month there's a huge withdrawal to family. It's like they were waiting for you to succeed just so they could take a piece of it. I hadn't seen it before, but she was right. The pattern was clear as day. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my father, about his last words to me. Take care of them, Daniel. They're all you've got. But Dad, I thought, staring at my ceiling, what if taking care of them means not giving them everything they want? What if I've been hurting them by making everything so easy? My phone rang, my personal line, not the blocked numbers. It was Sarah Winters, my ex-girlfriend from 3 years ago. We'd dated for 8 months before she ended things. I'd always wondered why. Sarah. I answered, surprised. Hi, Daniel. I know this is out of the blue, but I heard through the grapevine about what happened with your family. I just wanted to check on you. How did you hear about that? Jessica called me. She's been calling a lot of your old friends, trying to get them to convince you to change your mind. Of course she had. And you're calling because? Because I wanted to tell you that I think you did the right thing. I sat up in bed. You do. Daniel, do you remember why we broke up? You said we wanted different things. That was the diplomatic version. The truth is, I broke up with you because I couldn't be in a relationship with someone who put everyone else first except themselves and their partner. Your family called constantly. They demanded your time, your money, your attention. And you gave it to them every time without question. Her words stung because they were true. I remember our anniversary, Sarah continued. We had reservations at that restaurant you've been trying to get into for months. You were so excited. And then your mother called saying she needed you to come look at some contractor's work immediately. And you went. You just went. I remembered that night. I'd promised Sarah I'd be back in an hour. I hadn't returned until midnight, and by then she'd gone home. I tried to tell you then that they were taking advantage of you, Sarah said softly. But you didn't want to hear it. You said I didn't understand family loyalty. I was wrong, I said quietly. Maybe. Or maybe you just needed to figure it out on your own. I'm calling because I want you to know that cutting toxic people out of your life, even if they're family, isn't cruel. It's self-preservation. You deserve to be happy, Daniel. You deserve to build a life that isn't just about serving other people's needs. After we hung up, I lay in bed for a long time, thinking about all the relationships I'd sacrificed for my family. Sarah wasn't the only one. There had been friends who stopped calling because I always cancelled plans. Business opportunities I'd missed because I was dealing with family drama. Parts of myself I'd buried because they didn't have time or space to breathe. The next morning, I made a decision. I called my lawyer, Henry Morrison. Henry, I want to set up a family meeting. But not just any meeting. I want you there, I want everything documented, and I want some things made very clear. What kind of things? Boundaries. Real ones. Either they agree to them, or we're done. Permanently. You're sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Henry scheduled the meeting for the following week at his office, neutral territory. He sent formal letters to my mother, Jessica, and Marcus. To my surprise, they all agreed to come. The days leading up to the meeting were tense. I prepared what I wanted to say, revised it a dozen times, and then revised it again. Robert helped me role-play difficult scenarios. What if they cry? He asked. They probably will. What if they promise to change? Then I'll tell them I need to see the change, not hear promises. What if they refuse your terms? I paused. Then I walk away and never look back. Saying it out loud made it real. I could actually lose my family over this. Permanently. But as the meeting day approached, I realized something important. I'd already lost them. The family I wanted, the one that loved me unconditionally, that supported me without demands, that celebrated my successes instead of treating them as opportunities. That family didn't exist. Maybe it never had. The night before the meeting, I stood in my penthouse looking out over the city. Somewhere out there, my mother was probably rehearsing her guilt trips. Jessica was likely planning her counterarguments. Marcus was probably hoping he could just coast through without saying much, as usual. But I was ready. For the first time in my life, I was putting myself first. And that didn't make me selfish. It made me sane. Henry Morrison's law office occupied the 20th floor of a glass tower in downtown. The conference room he'd reserved for us had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a long marble table, and uncomfortable leather chairs that seemed designed to keep meetings short. I arrived 15 minutes early. Henry was already there, organizing documents. "You ready for this?" he asked. "No," I admitted. "But I'm doing it anyway." My family arrived exactly on time, probably the first time any of them had been punctual in years. My mother came in first, dressed in black as if attending a funeral. Jessica followed, her face carefully composed into an expression of hurt dignity. Marcus brought up the rear, looking uncomfortable in a wrinkled suit. They all stopped short when they saw Henry. "What is this?" my mother demanded. "Why is your lawyer here?" "Please sit down," Henry said in his professional voice. "This meeting is being recorded, and I'm here as a witness to ensure everything discussed is properly documented." Documented. Jessica's eyes narrowed. "Daniel, what the hell is going on?" "Sit down," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "All of you." They sat, exchanging glances that ranged from confused to angry. I remained standing at the head of the table, Henry beside me with his laptop open. "I've asked you here today because I need to set some things straight," I began. 3 weeks ago, at what was supposed to be a celebration dinner, Jessica told me that without you, I'm nothing. That statement, more than anything else that night, made me realize how fundamentally broken our family dynamic has become. "Danny," my mother started. "I'm not finished." My tone was sharper than I intended, but it worked. She closed her mouth. For the past 3 weeks, I've done a thorough review of our relationship. Henry helped me compile all the financial support I've provided over the last 8 years. Would anyone like to guess the total? Silence. $4.2 million, I said, letting the number hang in the air. That's not including Jessica's salary or Marcus's apartment. That's just direct financial gifts. You're keeping score? Marcus said. That's really low, man. No. Marcus. What's low is taking $4 million from someone and never once saying thank you. What's low is missing every important event in my life while demanding I drop everything for yours. What's low is treating family like an ATM machine. We never asked for. Jessica started. Yes, you did. I pulled out my phone and began reading. Here's a text from you, Jessica, from 2 years ago. Danny, I need $15,000 for a car repair. Don't make me beg. Here's one from Mom. Daniel, the house needs a new roof. You owe us this much at least. And Marcus, here's my personal favorite from you. Yo bro, need 20 grand for this investment thing. It's guaranteed money, and I'll totally pay you back. I looked up. You never paid me back, by the way. None of you ever paid me back. My mother's face was red. How dare you throw our private conversations? Private? I interrupted. There was nothing private about your demands. You called me during board meetings, during client pitches, during the few dates I managed to have. Every single aspect of my life has been interrupted by your needs for 8 years. Because that's what family does. Jessica shouted. We support each other. Then where was your support? I asked quietly. Where were you when I was working 90-hour weeks to keep my company alive? Where were you when I was eating ramen in a studio apartment? Where were you when Dad died and I had to handle everything because you were all too emotional to help with the arrangements? That last one hit home. I saw my mother flinch. That's not fair, she whispered. Isn't it? I was 19 years old, Mom. 19. And I had to plan Dad's funeral, deal with his debts, settle his estate, and comfort all of you while I was grieving too. Nobody asked if I was okay. Nobody asked if I needed help. You all just assumed I could handle it because I always handled everything. The room was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning. Henry cleared his throat. Mr. Harrison has asked me to present you with a formal document outlining the terms of future financial and personal interactions. You can review these at your leisure, but I'll summarize the key points. He slid packets across the table to each of them. First, Henry continued, all current financial support ends immediately. Mrs. Harrison, you have 3 months to arrange your own housing payment. Jessica, your employment termination is final. Marcus, the apartment lease will not be renewed. You can't do this, my mother cried. Second, Henry continued as if she hadn't spoken, any future financial assistance will be treated as a loan with formal documentation, interest, and repayment terms. No more gifts. This is insane, Jessica said, flipping through the pages. Third, family gatherings will be scheduled in advance, and Daniel will not be expected to drop everything for last-minute emergencies unless there is a verified medical crisis. So we have to schedule time with our own son? My mother asked, incredulous. Yes, I said. Because apparently, we need boundaries. Clear ones. In writing. Marcus finally spoke up. And if we don't agree to these terms? Then we have no relationship, I said simply. I will pay for 3 more months of Mom's mortgage and your apartment as a grace period. After that, you're on your own. We won't speak, we won't meet, and I will move on with my life. You would really abandon your family? My mother asked, tears starting to flow. Mom, you abandoned me years ago. You just kept cashing my checks, so you didn't notice. The words came out harsher than I intended, but they were true. I saw her face crumble. How can you say that? She sobbed. I love you. Do you? I asked, and I was surprised by how calm I felt. Do you love me, or do you love what I can do for you? If I lost everything tomorrow, if TechVision failed and I was broke, would you still be here? Would you still call me every day? Or would I suddenly become too difficult, too much work, not worth your time? She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Jessica stood up abruptly. I don't need this. I don't need you. You're not the only one with connections in this city. You're right, I agreed. You don't need me. You never did. You needed my money. There's a difference. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, but paused with her hand on the handle. You're going to regret this, Daniel. We're your family. When you're old and alone, don't come crying to us. I won't, I said. I promise you that. She left, the door slamming behind her. Marcus looked between me and my mother, clearly torn. I don't know what to say, man, he finally said. Then don't say anything, I replied. Just think about whether you want a relationship with your brother, or whether you just want a relationship with his wallet. You have 3 months to decide. He nodded slowly and left, much more quietly than Jessica. That left my mother and me. She was crying softly, her carefully applied makeup running down her cheeks. She suddenly looked old in a way I'd never noticed before. Daniel, she whispered, your father would be so disappointed. No, I said, and I felt the tears finally coming. Dad would understand. Dad built something from nothing. He worked hard, sacrificed, and never asked for handouts. He taught me those values. You remember what his last words to me were? She nodded, still crying. He said, take care of them, Daniel. They're all you've got. And I have. I've taken care of you for 8 years. I've put your needs above my own health, my own happiness, my own life. But I don't think that's what Dad meant. I think he meant to make sure you were okay, not to sacrifice myself on the altar of your comfort. I did my best, she said. Raising you after your father died. Dad died when I was 19, Mom. I was almost an adult. And you didn't raise me those last few years. I raised myself while taking care of you. She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw something like understanding in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to be like this, she said quietly. I know, I replied, and I meant it. I don't think any of you woke up one day and decided to take advantage of me. It happened gradually. I gave, you took, and it became a pattern. I'm as responsible for enabling it as you are for taking. So what happens now? She asked. That's up to you. You can sign these papers, agree to a healthier relationship with actual boundaries, and we can try to rebuild something real. Or you can leave, and we can both move on. She looked down at the packet in front of her. These terms, they're so formal, so cold. They're necessary. Trust has to be rebuilt, Mom. And that takes time and proof, not just promises. We sat in silence for several minutes. Henry had quietly excused himself to give us privacy, though I knew he was just outside the door. I'll think about it, my mother finally said, standing up slowly. I'll read these and I'll think about it. That's all I ask. She paused at the door, just as Jessica had. I do love you, Daniel. I know you don't believe that right now, but I do. Then show me, I said. Don't tell me. Show me. She nodded and left. I sat alone in that conference room for a long time after they'd all gone. Henry came back in eventually, bringing me a bottle of water. That was brutal, he said. Yeah. How do you feel? I thought about it. Free, I finally said. Terrified but free. That's normal. You just made one of the hardest decisions of your life. You think I did the right thing? Henry sat down across from me. Daniel, I've been a lawyer for 30 years. I've seen every kind of family dynamic you can imagine. What I saw in your situation wasn't family, it was exploitation. You did the right thing. Over the next few weeks, I heard nothing from my family. Jessica and Marcus never reached out at all. My mother called once, leaving a voicemail saying she needed time to think. I didn't push. Instead, I focused on myself for the first time in 8 years. I started going to therapy, something I should have done years ago. Dr. Reynolds helped me understand the patterns I'd fallen into, the way my father's death had left me desperate to hold on to whatever family I had left, even when they were toxic. Grief can make us do irrational things, she explained during one session. You lost your father, and you were terrified of losing anyone else. So you did everything possible to keep them close, even when keeping them close was hurting you. So what do I do now? I asked. You build a life based on what you want, not what you're afraid of losing. I started small. I called Sarah and apologized for how I'd treated her during our relationship. We met for coffee, and while we both agreed that ship had sailed, it felt good to make amends. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected. I discovered that many of them had been waiting for me to have time for them again. I threw myself into my work with renewed energy, but this time, I also made time for things I loved. I started playing guitar again, something I'd abandoned in college. I joined a weekend hiking group. I volunteered at a youth center, teaching underprivileged kids about technology and entrepreneurship. Life became lighter. 3 months and 2 days after the meeting, my mother called. Not a voicemail, an actual call. Daniel. It's Mom. Hi, Mom. I've been thinking about the meeting, about everything you said. And I want to apologize. I was quiet, not sure what to say. You were right, she continued, and I could hear her voice shaking. About all of it. I've been selfish. We all have. I convinced myself that because you had money, it didn't matter how much we took. That you could afford it, so it was okay. But it wasn't okay. No, I agreed. It wasn't. I'm going to sign your papers. Henry has them. But I wanted to talk to you first. I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry, and I want to try to have a real relationship with you. If you'll let me. I'd like that, I said, surprised to find that I meant it. I sold the house, she said. Too much space for one person anyway. I'm moving into a condo I can actually afford. No more asking you for money. I'm going to do this on my own. Mom, I'm proud of you. I heard her breath catch. You are? Yeah, I am. We talked for an hour that night. Really talked, not just her listing demands and me agreeing to them. We talked about Dad, about our grief, about the mistakes we'd both made. It wasn't perfect, and it didn't fix everything, but it was a start. Jessica never did come around. Last I heard, she'd moved to Los Angeles, claiming she needed a fresh start.